Hey guys, what's up? Let's have a talk about patience in investing. Because something that I've realized over 20 years in the stock market and now about 4 years in the TCG market is you will always have better outcomes as an investor if you have patience than if you attempt to have skill. And of course, I say attempt to have skill because very, very few investors actually have skill. We can say people like Warren Buffett probably had skill. He would identify good businesses with good cash flows that could generate cash on hand consistently for him to use to buy other businesses. And it worked out really well. He had a pretty decent track record. Now, he did make mistakes. He pretty much missed out on tech in the early days. He's missed out on Bitcoin. He's missed out on a lot of things over time. What about other people who maybe at one time we thought had skill as investors? I think a really good recent example is Cathie Wood with ARK Invest. During 2020, Cathie Wood was hailed as a genius, a savant, and a visionary. Now, at the time, I remember having a conversation with a friend and kind of incredulously asking, if Cathie Wood is such a great investor, why is it only in her 60s that she became a great investor? She's been on Wall Street for 40 years. Why was she never hailed as a great investor until 2020? And the solution to that question is that she just happened at the correct time to ride the momentum tech wave through the pandemic, where a whole bunch of momentum tech stocks that she already had her ARK Invest company investing with went up like crazy because of lockdowns, because of government helicopter money, because of a lot of other reasons in that time period. And of course, what we see is that when those tech stocks came back to earth, in the case of things like Zoom and Peloton, or, they simply stopped appreciating as quickly and gave back some of the huge gains they made in that time period, she's now become one of the greatest incinerators of capital in Wall Street history. And it's important to learn those lessons. When you are trying to compete in investment, whether it's stock investment, TCG investment, real estate investment, bonds, crypto, whatever else, if you're trying to compete on skill and knowledge, you are competing against the skill and knowledge of the entire rest of the market. And it is very unlikely that you have skill and knowledge that will allow you to beat the rest of the market. There may be rare examples, and most of those may be insider trading. But the odds that you can do it consistently over a long period of time with well-diversified assets are pretty much zero. And that's okay. It's not an insult to say that you are not more intelligent than the rest of the market. I am not more intelligent than the rest of the market. I've learned that the hard way back in the 2000s and maybe the early 2010s with the way that I attempted to invest in those times. I was younger and I thought, oh, yeah, certainly I'm smart. And of course I can make this bet and it'll work out great because I'm smart. And, very rarely you'll get lucky, but in the long run, you will lose. And in net, you will lose trying to be smarter than the rest of the market. And it's just the reality that one human is not going to be smarter than hedge funds full of quants and businesses that have huge amounts of capital to allocate to research to figure out what to invest in. It's okay. Now, what if you invest with patience? Now you're in a different competition with the rest of the market. And let's take the TCG market, for example. Let's say you buy a bunch of Pokemon boxes. Let's say you took Final Trade's advice years ago, and every Pokemon expansion, you buy a basic spread of booster boxes and ETBs. And you just put those in a closet, and you're just patient. Now you're competing in a test of patience against other TCG investors, and to some extent against every Pokemon buyer. Every Pokemon buyer who wants to rip packs to put a couple of the cards in their collection binder and to throw the rest in a giant bulk bin until they carry it into their local card store and sell it for a couple of dollars. That's mostly what you're competing against. And when it comes to the other Pokemon investors you're competing against, some of them are investing on credit. and they have to make a return within a time period where they have to sell no matter what. Some of them are weak hands who will lose their will, and if a box gets reprinted and the price goes down 30%, they'll throw in the towel to protect what they have left instead of just riding it out patiently. And what do we see in the Pokemon market if we ride it out patiently? Long-term Pokemon booster box returns are 15, 25, 35, sometimes 40% CAGRs just for being patient. That's all you have to do. In fact, it's the laziest way to invest. All you have to do is nothing. All you have to do is forget about it. Leave it in your closet, and sometime in the future, start taking out a few boxes and selling them into the market, a few at a time, piecemeal. There's plenty of volume and demand for that. And you will do much better than people who tried to time one piece in late 2023 and early 2024 and took a giant bath on the back of reprints. You'll do much better than people who tried to stonk bro their way into MetaZoo without thinking about whether the game had traction and staying power. Was it going to be around in 5 years? It's not. So all you have to do is be patient and you'll do the best. And it's the same way in the stock market. You know, what do? I buy S&P 500 index ETFs and I sit on them. I've been sitting on them for more than a decade, and boy, they've done really, really well. You're basically taking a bet on the entire US economy, and that's a pretty good bet to take. No matter how negative you may be about the US dollar, about economics in general, about the Fed, about the government, about the ability of our government to balance a budget, it's still a pretty good bet to bet on the entire US economy and to just hold that bet on the table for a long period of time. And in the TCG world, it's no different. Magic collector boxes have been on an amazing tear since 2023. And we've seen even earlier boxes from 21 and 22 start to make big moves bouncing back. Yes, a lot of them are still under original wholesale, but if you took advantage of the lows and you bought when they were down in 2022 and 23 and even 24, you're already seeing good profits on those. All you have to do is be patient. You don't have to be smarter than the rest of the market. I certainly don't try to be smarter than the rest of the market. I've always advocated for casting the wide thin net, buying a little bit of everything from the games you have conviction in, and maybe spending a little more on the products you think are best. So you take a small gamble trying to be smart, or maybe it's a small gamble on simply things you think the market is missing that are obvious. One that I've made is Dominaria Remastered collector boxes. They're just too damn good. There's too many great cards in those boxes for them to not do wonderfully long term. So I made a little bit bigger bet than normal on that product, and so far it's paid off great. You know, they jumped up from about 200 to 250 just in the last 2 months. 25% return in 2 months. You don't have to be smarter than the rest of the market. You just have to be patient and disciplined and diligent and buy a little bit of everything from the games that you have conviction in. And it works out great. You always do better investing with patience than you will attempting to invest with skill. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.